Storytime on when I caught my stepdad abusing my mom. So a little background information, men are trash, and I was 13 and in 7th grade. Well, it was my birthday and my mom took me to the shoe store to get some new shoes, and I saw this guy keep staring at my mother. So I pulled my mom aside and whispered to her like, hey, there's some dude staring at us, because low-key he looked creepy as hell. Well, apparently he wasn't creepy. He came up to my mom and started talking to her, and he was flirting with my mom a lot, so I grabbed a random pair of shoes and told her I was ready to go. Her and I walk up to the register. I think the conversation is over with her and James, but then he's like, oh, like, let me pay for that. Next thing you know, they exchange numbers and I start seeing him a lot more. And my mom seemed very happy, like she was smiling 24/7. So fast forward, we all move in together and I got a job. Well, my best friend Kayla was 17 and she had her driver's license. Like for part 2. Part 2 about when I caught my stepdad abusing my mother. So like I said, we all moved in together. My mother was super happy and I had a job. My best friend would come and pick me up after this job and I would usually get off work around 7 p.m. Well, around this time, James would have already been at work. He usually started work at like 6 o'clock, but every time that I would come home, my mother would be crying in her bedroom. So I ended up telling my best friend about it, and she said that she would come and get me early the next day from work, so that way we could possibly see what was happening while I wasn't there. So fast forward the next day, Kayla come and gets me early from work. She pulls around the corner, and we walk to my house because they would have seen her car if we parked on the street. I quietly unlock the door. My best friend and I go upstairs. We hear my mom screaming in pain, and the bedroom door was wide open. He was hitting my mother, so I kind of whispered to my best friend to take a video while I called the cops. He ended up going to jail, got a restraining order, and now my mom and I are living in a new house. Storytime about the time that I had a thing with my stepbrother. So a little background information. I was 14 and it was the first half of my freshman year. So my dad had recently broken up with my mom and he had different girls in and out of the house 24/7. I mean, he was kind of doing his thing after a 15-year marriage. Well, the one day I'm sitting in the house and he brings this girl Kayla over. She had a few kids herself, but both of them said that they would never date. Well, I thought her son Tyler was extremely good looking. So him and I started talking over Snapchat and things were going good for quite a while. Well, I would say a few months later, my dad told us that Kayla was coming over with her kids. And I was super confused because he seemed really nervous about it. So her kids and I were all sitting on the sofa. And they sat us down and they were like, we need to talk to you guys. We're going to call my dad Mike. She goes, Mike and I are dating now, so we all have to get along. The reason why she said that was because she thought that I didn't get along. Part 2 about how I had a thing with my stepbrother. So like I said, my dad and her sat us down and she goes, Mike and I are dating now, da-da-da-da-da. And she was like, so we all have to get along now. Because she thought that I didn't get along with some of her kids and her kids did not respect my dad at all. So like I said, Tyler and I were dating at this point and I freaked out. I was like, you guys can't start dating because Tyler and I are dating. And Kayla was like, well, that's too bad. You two need to break up because I'm your new mother now. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck did this bitch say? So I start screaming that it's not fair. Tyler's trying to calm me down. My dad is trying to calm Kayla down. To be honest, my dad didn't really care because I had told him about Tyler and I before the whole situation. I thought Tyler would be really upset at the situation, but he was actually pissed off at his mom. So we broke up. Kayla and my dad dated for a little bit over 2 months. Well, surprise, surprise, Kayla cheated on my dad with her ex. So Tyler and I started dating again. Storytime about how my mom got with my sister's boyfriend. So a little background information. I was 13 and in 8th grade. And my sister was a senior in high school and she was 17. And my sister always had a new boyfriend. Like after 3 months of dating somebody, they would break up and then she would be with a new guy a month later. And this started whenever she was a sophomore. So yeah, she had a lot of boyfriends. Anyway, so she had started dating this boy, and we're gonna call him Ben. Well, lucky for Ben, whenever they started dating was right around the time when we were supposed to go on our vacation that we take every year. So my mom and dad said that he could come with us. So my sister, who we're gonna call Emily, she decided to bring Ben, and I decided to bring one of my friends, Carly. We drove down, everything was good for the first 2 days, and usually what would happen on this vacation is my dad would end up staying at the hotel and doing work while we were all out doing stuff. So my mom, Ben, and Emily were all out drinking at the bar 24/7. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my mom got with my sister's boyfriend. So like I said, Emily, Ben, and my mom were out drinking 24/7 at the bar. And since this was a vacation that we took every year, my sister already knew a bunch of people down there. The one night my mom started feeling really sick at the bar, so Ben offered to take her back to the hotel. And at this time, my friend, my dad, and I were all down at the buffet in the hotel. So Ben took my mom upstairs to our hotel room, and my dad was like, "Oh, do you guys want to walk down to the fair?" We said yes, so he told us to go upstairs and get his wallet. So my friend and I go up in the elevator to our room, and I want to say this was about 20 or 30 minutes after Ben and my mom had went upstairs. So we get into the room, we hear the shower running, which was weird because we didn't think anybody was there. So instead of me calling my dad because it might have been a murderer, I go, and the door slightly creaked open, so I look through the door, and obviously I could hear you know what, but hers and his clothes were on the floor. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my mom got with my sister's boyfriend. So like I said, obviously we could hear stuff. We saw their clothes on the floor, so I took a video and I took a picture. But obviously you couldn't see anything. And I didn't want to tell my dad first. So my best friend and I, we went downstairs, we went to the carnival. And when my sister got back, she ended up getting back with Ben because obviously after he was done, he went back to my sister. I know this is confusing, but try to keep up. So I asked my sister if she can pretty please take me and my friend down to the pool to go swimming. So my sister came down with us, and then I was like, I have to tell you something. So then I ended up showing her the photos and the videos, and at this point, she's like, what the fuck? So surprisingly, without choking this man to death, she goes upstairs, she goes to sleep, and then the next morning, she goes and has a talk with my mom. So my mom, my sister, my friend, and I, we all sat down at the buffet in the morning and had breakfast. And my dad and Ben weren't there. Well, long story short, my mom ended up saying, it's not fair that you bring all these young guys around me, da-da-da-da-da. Are you really gonna break up our family because of this? And till this day, my dad still does not know about it. Story time about how I tried to stick up for this kid on the bus, but it got me suspended. So a little background information, I was 12 and in 7th grade. So it was a Wednesday, and when school ended, I got on the afternoon bus. And there was this boy named Josh that I was friends with. So I went and I sat next to him on the bus. After like 5 minutes of us waiting for the bus driver to get back on the bus, this boy named Kai that everybody loves for some reason comes over and rips me out of the seat. After that, he sits down next to Josh and starts punching him and screaming at him. So I grab this kid by his book bag, rip him out of the seat, and I sit next to Josh. I put my headphones in, plug in my phone, and this kid grabs the phone, throws it at the front of the bus. And there weren't any adults on the bus at this time because our bus driver was using the bathroom. And I didn't go up and get my phone because I knew that if I moved, this kid was probably going to hurt Josh again. So then this kid starts trying to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. An adult comes on the bus, finally. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got suspended for trying to stick up for some kid on the bus. So like I said, this kid is starting to try to punch me. So I punch him in the stomach. Finally, an adult gets on the bus. She yells at us to all sit down. And by the way, all the little fucking 12-year-olds had their phones out recording what was happening. So they look at the cameras, they were interviewing some of the kids, and Josh's sister comes up to me, and I was like, oh, shit. Hopefully she's not going to yell at me. I don't know why she would, but still. She was like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for sticking up for my brother. So then after a little bit, I hear my name get called on the speaker. Kai, Josh, and I were all called down to the office. All of our parents were there. Kai got a 3-day suspension, and I got a 3-week suspension. Even though I literally had scratches all over my freaking arms, and Kai didn't even have a bruise on him. Well, my mom, being the boss-ass bitch that she is, she told the school that if they went through with my suspension, she would call the news and tell them that my school was letting kids get away with bullying. Story time about why my best friend cut me off. So a little background information, I was 24 and I had a full-time job as a nurse, and I had been best friends with this girl since we were in 7th grade. As soon as she turned 21, she got married, had a kid, and just like any young tragic love story, her boyfriend, who was way older than her, left her for some girl who just turned 18. So I ended up letting her move in with me. She had too much pride to go back to her mom's house. I ended up kicking her out of my house though, because she would have random guys over 24/7, and she would smoke you know what in my house. So I had the cops called on me 24/7 because my neighbors could smell it. So fast forward to now, she's living with her mom. Her and I got over that fight, and she decided that she wanted to go to college. I was so proud of her, but she asked me if I could watch her kid when she had to go into school because she was doing mostly online. So of course I said yes, I wanted her to succeed. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my best friend cut me off. So like I said, she finally decided to go to college. Me being super happy for her, I would watch her kid whenever she would have to go into school. Well, the one night I'm making dinner and her kid's in the living room, I'm in the kitchen, and I go into the living room to tell him that dinner is ready, and I see my dog backed up into a corner and him with a fire poker literally poking my dog. I wouldn't even call it poking, he was pretty much trying to stab my dog. My dog has its ears back, it's shaking with anxiety. So I go over and I rip it out of his hands and I smack his fingers. And I tell him, we do not do that to the dog. Like, what is wrong with you? So my friend comes, picks him up. A few days later, she comes to drop him off again. And she says, hey, can I talk to you? I already knew what it was about, so I was expecting this. She was like, Gavin told me that you hit him last time he was here. And I was like, yeah, he pretty much was stabbing my dog. And then she's like, oh, well, he doesn't mean any harm. He plays with the dogs like that at home. Like, okay, sis, this